What if I told you that you could prove the nature of God and the entire universe using nothing but pure cold logic? Well, back in the 17th century, a philosopher named Baruch Spinoza claimed to do just that in his masterpiece, The Ethics. It's a wild book that's laid out like a geometry textbook, but its conclusions, they're some of the most radical in the history of human thought. So let's dive in and see how we pulled it off.
To really get how revolutionary Spinoza was, you've got to see this contrast. On one side, you have the idea of God that many of us are familiar with, a personal being, kind of like a king who rules over the universe, has plans, and passes judgment. But then, there's Spinoza's God. For him, God isn't outside of nature looking in. God is nature, the whole thing, an infinite, impersonal system that just follows its own unbreakable logical rules. No plans, no desires, no judgment. It's a complete flip of the script.
All right, so here's our game plan for breaking down this massive idea. First, we'll dig into Spinoza's radical concept of God. Then, we'll look at the fundamental building blocks of his argument. After that, we'll actually walk through the proof itself, and then we'll unpack the pretty shocking consequences. And finally, we'll see how he finds a really unique kind of freedom in a universe where everything is necessary.
So yeah, that's the big question, right? How on earth could someone in the 17th century claim to prove that God is nature, not with faith or scripture, but with the cold, hard certainty of a math equation?
I mean, just imagine trying to build a complete model of reality, from the most distant star all the way down to your own thoughts, and starting with just a few perfectly airtight definitions. That was Spinoza's incredible ambition. He truly believed that if his starting points were solid, he could use logic alone to deduce the nature of absolutely everything.
Okay, so before we can even touch the proof, we've got to get on the same page with a few key terms Spinoza uses. Seriously, think of these next few ideas as the essential keys that unlock his entire worldview.
First up, and this is the big one, is substance. For Spinoza, a substance is something that is completely and totally independent. It doesn't need anything else to exist, or even for us to understand it. Think of it like this. A shadow can't exist without a person, right? And a wave is nothing without the ocean. But a substance, it needs nothing. It's the ultimate, self-sufficient foundation of all reality.
Next, we have attribute. An attribute is basically a fundamental way that we can perceive what a substance is. Now, Spinoza thought that the ultimate substance has an infinite number of these attributes, but we humans, we can only grasp two of them. The first is thought, and this isn't just your random musings, it's the entire non-physical universe of ideas and consciousness. The second is extension, which is everything physical, the whole universe of matter, space, and all the stuff in it.
So, if substance is the ultimate foundation, what about, well, everything else, like you, me, this planet? That's where mode comes in. A mode is simply a particular state or modification of a substance, a specific tree, your own body, an individual thought you're having right now. These are all modes. They can't exist on their own. They're like individual waves on the vast ocean of substance. They look distinct for a moment, but they're always just a part of the whole.
And here is where it all comes together in his master definition of God. For Spinoza, God isn't a substance out of many. No way. God is the one and only substance, the single, absolutely infinite being that has every possible attribute. God, therefore, is the sum total of all reality, expressed in infinite ways. In other words, God is nature.
Okay, now that we've got those key definitions down, Spinoza is ready to build his proof. He sets them up like a series of logical dominoes, and once he pushes that first one, the conclusion becomes pretty much inevitable.
Let's walk through a simplified version. Step 1. He says no two substances can share the same basic quality, the same attribute, because if they did, you wouldn't be able to tell them apart. They'd be the same thing. Step 2. Because they have nothing in common, one substance can't create another one. This means any substance has to be its own cause. It can't be made by something else. Step 3. From that, he concludes that existence is just part of what a substance is. It is, in its very nature, to exist. And finally, step 4. If a substance with infinite attributes, which is his definition of God, is even possible, then it must exist. Why? Because there's nothing external that could possibly stop it, and its own internal nature guarantees it.
And this leads to the absolute mic drop moment of his proof. Since God is defined as the substance that has all possible attributes, there can't be a second substance. I mean, think about it. What attributes would it even have left? God's got them all. Therefore, there is only one substance, God, and everything else in the entire universe is just a mode of God.
Okay, so if you accept Spinoza's proof, you have to be ready for the consequences, because they are enormous. They completely overturn our most common-sense ideas about the universe and our place in it.
So, first consequence, you can just say goodbye to luck, chance, and accidents. In Spinoza's system, everything that happens out of absolute logical necessity. The universe unfolds with the same cold inevitability as a mathematical equation. From the Big Bang to what you had for breakfast this morning, nothing could have been any different.
And of course, that leads directly to his most famous and most controversial idea. There is no free will. Spinoza argues that we feel free only because we're aware of our own desires, but we are completely ignorant of the infinite chain of causes that produce those desires in us to begin with.
And he doesn't stop there. All those huge concepts we base our lives on, good and evil, beauty and ugliness, even purpose itself, Spinoza argues they aren't real features of the universe at all. They're just human judgments, prejudices that we project onto the world based on what we find useful or pleasing. Nature itself is completely neutral.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds incredibly bleak, doesn't it? If everything is determined and our most important values are just projections, what's the point of anything? Well, this is where Spinoza's philosophy takes its most surprising and I think most beautiful turn.
It's the natural question to ask, right? If we're not really in the driver's seat, are we just helpless puppets being jerked around by cosmic strings? Spinoza's answer is a total reversal. He says we've been looking for freedom in the wrong place all along. True freedom isn't some fantasy about breaking the laws of nature. It's the opposite. It is the profound peace and power that comes from understanding those laws, from seeing with clarity why things are the way they are, and why they absolutely must be that way.
And that leaves us with a final question to chew on, straight from Spinoza's world. What changes inside you when you stop looking for a story with a purpose in the universe and you start to see it instead as a vast, perfect, logical system? A system where you aren't just a visitor with a special destiny, but an integral part of it all, governed by the same beautiful and unbreakable laws as everything else.